The courtroom was silent until the judge's words shattered the illusion. In a single ruling, Blake Lively's entire defense began to crumble. Her carefully built image, her Hollywood connections, and her last line of protection. What started as a quiet lawsuit has now spiraled into one of the most shocking legal reversals in celebrity history. Hidden emails, secret recordings, and a judge with ties to her inner circle. All of it is now being dragged into the light. And this time there's no PR team strong enough to bury the truth. Blake Lively was never supposed to face a courtroom like this. The air was heavy, the silence unbearable, and the weight of every headline, every whisper, every buried message seemed to echo through the marble halls as the judge leaned forward and spoke the words that no one in the room expected. Why would you think that made it okay for you without any advanced notice to bring this matter before the jury? That single question sliced through the room like a blade. Blake sat, frozen eyes, low hands trembling in her lap, while her legal team whispered in panic, because what had begun as a carefully planned strategy to protect her image had now transformed into a full-blown crisis that could unravel everything she had built. This was not just another celebrity dispute. This was the collapse of a defense, built on influence and confidence that suddenly shattered under the weight of evidence the world had not yet seen. As reporters typed furiously from the gallery, the reality set in. Blake Lively was losing control, not just of the case, but of the narrative itself. And outside the courthouse, the world was waiting. The story began to unravel when Judge Louis J. Lyman, who had presided over the case since early spring, dismissed two of Justin Baldoni's most important claims, citing vague reasons that legal analysts immediately called questionable. Those claims directly accused Blake of breach of trust and sabotage, a move that made no sense given the documented timeline of leaks, communications, and confidential material. Yet the order came through swiftly and quietly. No detailed explanation, no deep analysis, just a 2-page ruling that left everyone stunned. It looked like a procedural move on paper, but it felt like something else, something hidden and deliberate. It didn't take long before the rumors started, and when investigative journalists started digging into the background of Judge Lyman, what they found sent shockwaves through every legal and entertainment circle imaginable. His brother Charles Lyman had direct financial connections to Orion Talent Group, a powerful Hollywood agency linked to some of Blake's closest allies and business partners. Orion had handled brand contracts and production deals tied to her projects, and that connection alone was enough to raise serious concerns. How could a federal judge rule fairly on a case that touched the very network his family benefited from within hours? Legal commentators were on air, calling it one of the most suspicious rulings of the year. Law professors spoke out demanding transparency, and when the story reached the headlines, the internet exploded with disbelief. Within days, Chief Judge Deborah Ann Livingston approved an internal review, and for the first time in this entire saga, the untouchable barrier surrounding Blake's legal protection began to crack. Her team went silent, and behind closed doors, panic spread, because the case that was supposed to stay quiet had now become the most discussed scandal in Hollywood. The appeal came fast and hard, led by Brian Friedman, Baldoni's attorney, known for his aggressive precision and unwillingness to compromise. His filing accused Judge Lyman of procedural corruption, conflict of interest, and violation of due process. He argued that the ruling was not just flawed, but tainted, and that the judge's decision had been compromised by external influence. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals responded faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, they released a ruling that did not just overturn Lyman's decision, it obliterated it. In language rarely seen in appellate opinions, the court described his actions as procedurally inconsistent, legally insufficient, and devoid of the analytical reasoning required under federal law. In a subtle but devastating footnote, the panel even hinted at extrajudicial influence, implying something unethical may have shaped the judgment. The legal world froze. This was no longer about celebrity gossip, it was about judicial integrity itself. When the decision became public, headlines screamed that a sitting judge was under review for undisclosed financial bias. Every outlet from Deadline Legal to Hollywood Courier ran front-page stories. Judge Lyman was removed from the case effective immediately and reassigned to federal review for potential misconduct. Chief Judge Livingston wasted no time replacing him with a name that immediately changed the atmosphere. Judge Teresa Miguel, a former federal prosecutor known For her strict sense of justice and unflinching focus on the truth, she had built a reputation for handling high-profile defamation and media manipulation cases with precision and zero tolerance for theatrics. Within hours of her appointment, she issued her first order reinstating all 4 of Baldoni's original claims: breach of trust, reputational sabotage, violation of NDA, and interference. The message was crystal clear: no more favoritism, no more hidden influence, no more control. The rules were changing, and for Blake, that meant every document, every email, every message her team once buried under procedural loopholes would now resurface. The pressure was enormous. Blake's lawyers immediately objected, but Judge Miguel was not a woman, easily swayed by emotion or fame during her first hearing. She cut off the defense mid-sentence, declaring, "This is not a press tour site, the rule or move on." The courtroom fell silent. The tone was set. This case would be fought on evidence alone. Not power, not status, not celebrity. The new docket reflected the shift. Her second order required Blake's legal team to produce all materials previously dismissed under Judge Lyman, including internal emails, metadata logs, and Slack exports from her PR team servers dated mid-2020. It also mentioned an iCloud forensic review previously blocked by Lyman that could potentially reveal deleted data. Baldoni's lawyers had long claimed would expose intentional sabotage. These developments turned the courtroom into a pressure cooker. Her lawyers scrambled to comply while journalists camped outside speculating on what new revelations might emerge. Every move from Blake's side now felt defensive, every filing, reactive, every silence louder. Then came the first real crack in her defense on June 5th. During an early evidentiary session, Blake's lead counsel tried to object to the reintroduction of the PR evidence, arguing that it violated previous discovery boundaries. Judge Miguel rejected the objection instantly, noting that those boundaries were themselves the product of a flawed ruling. The exchange grew heated until a courtroom microphone captured a frustrated outburst from defense counsel declaring, "We are being ambushed with new precedent." The word spread like wildfire through the press, painting an image of a team unraveling in real time. But the true bombshell landed a week later, when an exhibit mistakenly attached to a routine filing exposed internal communications from Blake's crisis management division. The document was labeled Project Optics, and it contained a strategy memo detailing how to delay leaks, manipulate social media conversations, and influence coverage across online platforms. The memo included a timeline tracking Reddit and TikTok discussions, and even mentioned specific creators by code name, instructing PR staff to neutralize them. Before June 5th, it was the kind of document that could destroy credibility in seconds. Within 2 days, 2 junior attorneys on Blake's defense team resigned, citing ethical concerns and internal conflict over withheld evidence law. Publications confirmed their departures and noted that both had previously raised objections to improper discovery practices. Inside sources described the mood in Blake's camp as chaotic, fractured, and defensive. One lawyer told a reporter off record that people were terrified of being caught in the crossfire. The public sentiment shifted fast. What had once been viewed as a private creative dispute now looked like an elaborate operation to control perception. The internet seized on it with fury. Project Optics trended for nearly 24 hours. Screenshots and analysis videos filled. Every platform, influencers, lawyers, and fans dissected the memo line by line, asking how far Blake's team had really gone to protect her image. As the media storm grew, Judge Miguel tightened her hold on the case. She ordered 2 closed-door sessions to review the authenticity of the leaked files and ruled that, if verified, they could be entered into evidence under the category of behavioral pattern and intent. Within legal circles, this was monumental. It meant the court was willing to consider not just isolated acts, but a systematic effort to silence opposition. Then came the recordings. 2 audio files labeled A4C and B9E were submitted for review. A4C featured Blake's voice in a private call saying she would make sure someone was blackballed quietly, no fingerprints, while the other party replied, suggesting the best way was to let it fade through the trades. First, then contact the streaming partners. Digital Integrity Labs confirmed the file was authentic and unedited, captured through an encrypted memo app on a personal device in November 2022. The second recording, B9E, was even more explosive. It appeared to capture a conversation between Blake and a senior streaming executive discussing the cancellation of a project that had once been co-developed with Justin Baldoni. Her tone sharp, emotional, and unmistakably assertive. She said, "It's not just that he's greenlit. It's that I'm being erased. You kill this project, or I walk from everything else." Though the identity of the executive was never confirmed. Legal insiders speculated based on voice pattern analysis that it could be Jared Castellan, a top-level producer at the streaming giant. His lawyers quickly filed a protective order to restrict public playback, but the damage was already done. The existence of the recordings themselves altered the entire trajectory of the trial. What once was viewed as speculation was now documented. Evidence of behind-the-scenes interference. And when paired with the Project Optics memo, it painted a chilling portrait of an operation running deeper than anyone realized. Soon after, an encrypted email thread surfaced from a Proton Mail account linked to one of Blake's team members. It contained phrases like coordinated media erosion and kill the mental health angle, referencing a deliberate effort to diminish Justin's professional reputation. These documents had timestamps matching key dates in the production's cancellation timeline. They were not coincidences, they were coordinated steps. And as Judge Miguel reviewed the submissions, her tone grew sharper. She publicly warned the defense that the court would not tolerate further withholding of materials. Baldoni's side grew bolder, and the court filings reflected growing confidence, while Blake's team struggled to contain the narrative outside. Her publicists issued generic statements about privacy and respect for the legal process. But the world was already forming its opinion. Even among her inner circle, support began to fracture. Sources reported that major brand partners had paused future collaborations while streaming networks quietly distanced themselves. As the case deepened, new forensic data revealed that deleted iCloud backups contained directories labeled Greenlight Kill Folder and internal notes outlining strategies to delay approvals, leak incomplete drafts, and manipulate audience sentiment metadata. Trace these to devices registered under Blake's corporate IP address, and the findings were damning. A former assistant became central to the investigation after being linked to email forwarding between Blake's production server and a rival studio. But before she could complete her deposition, she left the country abruptly, citing personal reasons. With each revelation, the walls seemed to close and the courtroom transformed from a stage of procedural debate into a battleground of truth as reporters waited outside for any update. The sense of suspense was unbearable. Every day ended with more questions than answers, and as July approached and the evidentiary hearing loomed, the stakes could not have been higher. Blake's silence only added to the tension. The internet demanded answers. The press sought statements, and Justin's team quietly prepared for what could be the most defining moment of their careers. Because in this case, the truth was no longer buried. It was about to be heard, and once the new judge opened the floor to evidence, nothing would ever be the same again. The tension inside that courtroom seemed to thicken with every passing second, as the attorneys exchanged sharp glances and whispered comments behind stacks of paper, while the judge maintained a calm yet intimidating composure, the kind that commands silence without ever needing to raise a voice. And the audience, which included several journalists and curious industry insiders, leaned forward, hanging on to every small detail, because they knew this was not just another Hollywood scandal. It was the kind of case that could rewrite careers and legacies in real time, the kind that forces everyone in the entertainment industry to reconsider what loyalty means and how much truth can cost when it's finally exposed. The witness on the stand hesitated, looking toward the defense table as if searching for reassurance, but none came. The lawyer representing the accused shifted uncomfortably, knowing that every word from that witness could shift public perception in a single breath. And when the transcript of those private exchanges began to circulate online, it was no longer just a matter of law. It became a war of image versus evidence, and the internet was taking no prisoners. The narrative spun out in all directions, with speculation dominating the headlines and think pieces dissecting tone, body language, and history. Between the involved parties, the legal team tried to regain control. But by then, the story had taken a life of its own. Influencers were analyzing courtroom sketches. Fans were decoding every pause in testimony, and late-night hosts couldn't resist making it the punchline of their monologues. Yet beneath all the noise, there was a haunting truth that no one could fully ignore, that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones people convince themselves are harmless. The judge then called for a recess, and the murmur of voices filled the room, a chaotic mix of relief and rising anxiety. Reporters rushed out to send updates. Editors barked for new angles, and within minutes, every major outlet had pushed out breaking news banners, painting contrasting pictures depending on which side they leaned toward. One headline screamed justice, finally catches up while another countered with claims of persecution by narrative manipulation. The accused remained seated calm on the outside, but visibly tense in small gestures. Fingers tapping knees, tightening eyes darting toward familiar faces in the gallery where former friends sat now. Avoiding direct eye contact, one could almost feel the weight of betrayal and realization blending together. That what once felt like camaraderie had evolved into cold calculation and survival instincts. Yet there was still a flicker of defiance that made it impossible to look away. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered, some holding signs demanding accountability, others defending privacy and fairness, and their chants collided in the air like competing truths. The tension wasn't just inside anymore. It had spilled into the streets where strangers debated morality versus fame over coffee, and news anchors dissected the case like it was a cinematic thriller with act structures and emotional arcs. One network analyst even compared the proceedings to an unfolding psychological drama where guilt wasn't always determined by facts, but by who controlled the narrative louder, longer, and smarter. Social media added its own soundtrack. Every minute updates were posted, threads dissected evidence, and digital detectives pulled archives from interviews years old, suggesting patterns and contradictions even when none were proven. And though the lawyers warned that speculation could taint public opinion, it was far too late. The court of public opinion had already rendered its own version of the verdict. The emotional toll began to show as insiders whispered that key figures were struggling behind closed doors, losing sleep, fearing leaks and betrayal from within their own camps, and that the constant spotlight made even small gestures seem suspicious. Every text, every call, every silence became potential evidence of complicity or deceit. It was as if the case itself had mutated into a mirror reflecting back everyone's hidden motives and survival instincts. When the court resumed, the energy shifted once more. The prosecutor presented a new line of questioning so calculated it felt rehearsed for maximum psychological impact, and the witness faltered for a split second too long. The courtroom collectively held its breath, knowing that hesitation alone could be interpreted as guilt or confusion. Depending on the listener, that moment replayed endlessly on social media, slowed down and analyzed from every angle with self-proclaimed experts, offering interpretations of facial microexpressions. It was no longer about what was said, but how it was said, and in an age where perception often trumps truth, that was enough to send ripples across the industry. A former collaborator released a vague post hinting that more revelations were on the horizon, fueling speculation that the scandal had deeper layers than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, sponsors quietly pulled back endorsements, PR teams scrambled to rewrite narratives, and studios began issuing statements distancing themselves from all parties until the truth became secondary to survival. The atmosphere grew heavier as new evidence emerged, casting doubt on prior assumptions and forcing both sides to recalibrate strategies. What had begun as a single lawsuit now threatened to drag an entire network of relationships into the spotlight, exposing alliances, secrets, and contradictions that most had spent years carefully concealing. And through it all, the cameras kept rolling, capturing every sigh, every whispered conversation, every sideways glance that could feed the never-ending appetite of a world desperate for closure, but not necessarily justice. And as the day ended, the lead attorney for the defense stepped outside, surrounded by microphones and flashing lights, his expression unreadable when asked if his client feared the next phase. He simply replied, "The truth always finds its way out," and turned away, leaving the crowd buzzing with questions, because in this case, truth wasn't a shield. It was a ticking clock counting down to whatever revelation would come next. And no one seemed ready for how devastating that truth might be once it was fully unveiled in the days that followed. New documents were hinted at, anonymous sources teased potential witnesses, and the entire Hollywood PR machine braced itself, as if anticipating a storm that couldn't be contained anymore. It was clear now that this was not just a legal matter. It was a cultural reckoning, a test of how far influence could bend justice before breaking entirely. And somewhere amid the chaos, the central figures realized that no matter who technically won the trial, their reputations had already been rewritten by forces far beyond their control. This was the kind of story that would define careers, destroy alliances, and leave a cautionary tale etched permanently into Hollywood history. When the final ruling came, it didn't arrive with fireworks or dramatic outbursts, but with the quiet inevitability of truth. Catching up to time, the judge's voice, calm yet final, echoed through the courtroom as cameras clicked and pens raced to capture every phrase that would define the end of this long and brutal saga. The faces of those involved told stories that no headline could fully express. Some looked relieved, others hollowed out by months of relentless scrutiny. The verdict itself left room for interpretation, as justice often does, but it was the emotional verdict that would echo far beyond the courthouse walls, reputations forever altered, relationships, shattered careers, recalibrated, and a collective reminder that the higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted, half cheering, half in disbelief, reporters shouting questions no one was ready to answer, and the accused, though technically vindicated in part, carried an expression that betrayed no triumph, only exhaustion, because in the end, even victory can feel like loss when everything you built has been dragged through public fire. The lawyers exchanged polite nods, masking months of rivalry behind professional restraint, knowing they too had become part of a story that would be dissected for years in classrooms, tabloids, and documentaries. But for the public, the fascination wasn't just with the outcome, it was with the spectacle, the way fame, truth, and accountability collided in one volatile experiment. And for those watching from afar, it became a lesson in how fragile narratives can be, how easily image becomes armor and weapon. At the same time, social media quickly moved on to the next scandal. But the people at the heart of this case would live with its aftershocks long after the headlines faded. Industry insiders whispered that Hollywood itself had changed after this, that power was no longer about visibility, but resilience. That truth, though painful, had begun to reclaim value in a business built on illusion. In the quiet aftermath, as the courthouse emptied and the cameras dimmed, one could almost hear the hum of reflection settling over the city that thrives on reinvention. The truth had not destroyed Hollywood, but it had peeled back its sheen, revealing that even among stars, there are cracks. And even the brightest lights can cast deep shadows, in that silence somewhere behind closed doors. Those who survived this storm began rebuilding slowly, cautiously, knowing that in a world where perception once ruled, perhaps authenticity would now have its moment. And though many would try to spin new narratives to reclaim what was lost, the memory of this trial would linger as a reminder that justice, fame, and redemption rarely coexist peacefully in the same frame, and that sometimes the only real victory is learning to walk away from the ashes without pretending they were never there.